Hello, welcome to Bridges Live, and it presents You Be the Judge. Welcome everyone to the show, You Be the Judge. My name is Dr. Paul Dyer, and this is Marylin, Pierre, attorney at law. We come to you every Wednesday to talk about some legal issues that come up in our foresight, not our foresight, but our binoculars, our vision, so we can give you some good information, understanding, and some actions. And off air, we were talking a little bit about attorneys. And I was shocked to hear how few black attorneys there are in the United States. And that statistics is 5%?
Yeah, 5% of all attorneys in the United States, they say is black. And 2% of those are women.
That number is sad. And
really sad.
But now, and I used to hear of another statistics that even out of 10 attorneys, there's probably 6 non-practicing. They keep their license, but they don't practice. Is that number is it that high relatively with practicing and non-practicing?
I don't know what the numbers are specifically, but I know that in law, well, you could do so much with a law license that
Right.
I would not be surprised. I mean, think about our politicians and how many of them have law licenses, and that's not considered practicing law. That's considered
Politicking.
I guess, yeah, exactly. So,
So that brings us to a thing when it comes to politicians with law license is because most of the language written legally, most of the stuff that's written for politics and briefs is illegal terms and terminology. Is that what it is?
I would agree with you. Some people have said that no matter what bill is passed, it's called the Lawyers Employment Act, in the sense that they're going to have people who are pro or con, and no matter which side you are, if you're a lawyer, you argue whatever side you're being paid to argue for. So you remain employed. So we could look at it that way too.
Now,
would that be too harsh?
No, it's not harsh, because I think that's where we have a problem as civilians. And it's funny. When we use the term civilians, the other term you heard civilians is when you were where?
In the military.
In the military. Mm-hmm. The other term you hear civilians is when you're an attorney.
Yes, that's true.
If there's a lot of people on the civilian side, they're left out of a lot of things.
A lot of things. And sometimes you don't know what you don't know. And I think that's why, and some people are like, oh, that's so expensive. And, maybe I could get somebody to do it for me for less money. And I'm not saying just because you pay more, it's worth more. Sometimes you just have to look for the best value for your money rather than, who's charging
what
more per hour.
And I've always said, being on, because I don't think I'll ever be on the full civilian side because of the things that I went through, things I know, and the people I know. Mm-hmm. Because people who are totally civilians, they are literally left in the dark completely.
I would say that's by design. I mean, think about it. If you are, if you're a lawyer, you went to school to learn basically a different language in order to then translate that language to civilians.
Correct.
If you're in the military, you also learn a different language, sometimes to keep civilians from understanding what you're saying, and sometimes it is to, sometimes it's just a shorthand for communicating between the people you want to communicate with.
But I think this is by design to keep civilians with who they are in their place. And so this is where this is called a system. Now that's where, when you design something like a maze or a puzzle, it is meant to do something. And this type of legal system is a system, more of a maze, for only certain people to navigate through. Is that about right?
That is true. Well, that is true. And sometimes you don't know where the hurdles are. You don't know what the minefields are, where the pitfalls are. And sometimes you don't even know where the end is. How far away from the end are you? Are you is it going to take an hour for you to walk there, or is it going to take you 10 hours? Sometimes you just don't know.
Now, I didn't know that a lot of black attorneys specifically are losing their licenses quicker than their counterparts who are not black.
Well,
Then the white attorneys. Let's just call it for what it is. Then the white attorneys.
Well, in Maryland, when you look at the numbers of people who are reported, it's on the Court of Appeals' website. The people who have lost their attorney, the attorneys who have lost their licenses or who have been reprimanded by the Attorney Grievance Commission. Clearly, you could see that black attorneys are overrepresented in that population. And you could say, well, maybe they're not as good as.
I was going to say that.
Yeah, well, because that's what some people say. Well, that's because they're not as good as. They make more mistakes. They do this, that, and the other. I would say the proof is in the pudding. I want to see why it is that has happened. And there's really no oversight in terms of looking at who's losing their licenses and why. The Grievance Commission seems to have free reign in terms of what they investigate, what their results are. Some of them, they take it to court, but to take it to court means that now the attorney has to hire somebody else to represent them, and financial matters loom all over the place.
So with these many attorneys that has lost their license or lost their, I wonder what they're doing now. Are they fighting the system, or did they just, I wonder if they're giving up. Do you know anyone that's lost their license and decide to be like, okay, I'm just done with it?
I know the whole spectrum. I know some people who are just, okay, I'm done with it. I know some people are still fighting. I know some people who are just, well, let me wait my time and maybe I could reapply again. So it's different personalities, different situations, different results, different ways of addressing what has happened to them.
When it comes to you be the judge, we like to talk about legal issues. We like to talk about things that are in our focus. And recently there was a bill that came up that just kind of makes me sick. And after reading it, please, Marylin, tell us about the bill and tell us the nuances of it, and then we can get into it.
Oh, wait. Before I actually say about the bill, yes. I want to talk a little bit more about the process itself, because I think
yes. It's important.
It's important to understand why it is that this bill is such a problem. Oh, yeah. Well, why these sets of bills are such a problem. In the federal system, there's basically one way of becoming a judge, and that is, you meet the qualifications to become a judge, and they're all written down. And you apply to become a judge, you get interviewed by a panel, the panel recommends you, and you go, and then the president chooses somebody from the list that the panel has recommended. You go in front of the Senate, you become a judge. That's it. And it is a lifetime appointment. And no matter what level of the federal system you are, whether you are at the district court, the Court of Appeals, or the Supreme Court, it's the same process. So that's it. In the state of Maryland, we have a hybrid system. In the state of Maryland, since there are 4 levels of courts, the district court, the circuit court, the Court of Special Appeals, and the Court of Appeals, there are different ways of getting to each of these courts. All the courts start out with an interview process by a commission that is appointed by the governor. Whoever the governor is, the governor appoints a commission, a 13-member commission, usually 1 in each county, but sometimes some of the counties, they do different counties. So, for instance, on the Eastern Shore, you might have 1 commission of 13 members for, a couple of different counties. In Montgomery County, Prince George's County, Howard, and Baltimore, and all these larger counties, it's 13 members per county.
Okay.
Now, what happens is that the applicants interview with a bunch of different bar associations. But basically, those bar associations, they don't have any power. It's basically a meet and greet. You meet with them usually 15 minutes, and they're like, "Hey, I looked at your application. You look like a nice person."
Basically, it's the slap and tickle.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Hey, we're the Hispanic Bar Association. Are you going to watch out for our interest on the bench? Yes.
Right, right.
We're the Alliance of Black Women Attorneys. We're the J. Franklin Bourne Bar Association. We're the Women's Bar Association. We're the LGBTQ Bar Association. We're the, Maryland Defense Council. We're the Women's Law Center. We're, whatever those 14 are. They're like, we've looked at your application. Are you going to, do we have any reason that you are going to give us that we think that you are going to fight against what we find to be in our best interest? And of course, the answer is, oh, no. I love
the answer is always going to be no.
Exactly. So I have yet to run into somebody who's going to say, I know you're the Asian Pacific American Bar Association, but I will fight tooth and nail, to make sure that I am really prejudiced against you when I get on the bench. You'll never find anybody answering that question that way. And I'm not saying that they will. I'm just giving an example in terms of this is just a meet and greet. This is just a glad handling. Let's see if we could be cordial to each other for those 15 minutes kind of.
So, there's two things I want people to know. One, you ran to be a judge this year.
Yes, exactly.
That's one. Two, do you think this is where judges are normally bought?
Well, I'm going through this process for a reason because, like I said, this is not the governor's commission. These are just the different bar associations that the candidates go and the candidates meet with. Those bar associations then give recommendations. It's like, oh, I think this person is qualified. I don't think this person is qualified, or I have concerns about this person. I don't have concerns about this person. But like I said, I've known judges who are on the bench who have not had the most stellar recommendations from the bar associations, who still managed to get on the bench because of the governor's commission. And I'm going to speak a little bit about the governor's commission later. And I know some people who had stellar recommendations from the bar associations who got to the governor's commission, and the governor's commission loved them, and now they're sitting on the bench, or the governor's commission didn't like them in spite of every other bar association liking them, and now they're not sitting on the bench. So that's what I'm trying to say. There's all this big deal about, oh, we interviewed with all these different bar associations and they found us to be the best. Well,
well, not true.
They've got no power over that. Now, the governor's commission, that 13-member commission that I was talking about, now that's the one who makes the recommendation, because if your name is not shortlisted on the governor's commission, then you cannot be seen by the governor for that vacancy. So, for instance, I was told recently that on the Court of Appeals and on the Court of Special Appeals lists that was sent recently, there were no African American
on the list.
So that means that on the Court of Appeals and on the Court of Special Appeals, the governor did not have anybody of color that he could have appointed if he wanted to. What some governors have done, I know that Governor Ehrlich, he's the last one that I remember who sent back the list and said, hey, it's like, I don't like any of the people that you sent me. Start over. Yeah, exactly. But I've never heard of Governor Hogan saying that. I'm not saying he hasn't. I'm just saying that this process is so closed that unless you're paying particular attention and unless you have certain access, you're not going to know. Like, for instance, if he did that in Prince George's County or Howard County, even though they're just right over the line, I would not know about it because it's really hard to follow all the ins and outs of all the different.
But this has been a complaint before. This is not new.
I hope it continues to be, because so much progress needs to be made with the way things are done. Oh, okay. Okay. So anyway, so if the Governor's Commission sends your name up, and just a little bit about the Governor's Commission. The Governor's Commission is made it's supposed to be made up of lawyers and public members.
Okay.
And
supposed to be.
County,
You underline that word. You know that, right? You said supposed to be.
It's supposed to be. And I've looked, and in Washington County, for instance, out of the 13, I think 6 of them are public members. And in different counties, you have different numbers who are public members. In Montgomery County, historically, it's been about 2 public members. For the past 2 years, though, I think for the past 2 years, all 13 of them have been lawyers, which is quite problematic. So, because basically you have all these lawyers choosing who is going to be on the bench, and you have everybody knowing each other.
Of course,
that puts that puts certain law firms at a great advantage when it comes to that.
So we're still going back into this now. And please don't get off track. But how can we not? This makes it a good old boy system, a who knows who system, and also how do we not know that these judges, like we have recently found out by the FBI in 2006, well, not recently, but 2006, when there has been extremist white supremacists in the police force. We know that there's white supremacy in businesses. Why do we not think there isn't this type of extremists in attorneys and judges?
Which is why I'm trying to explain the process.
Good.
And by explaining the process, I think we could then talk about what the proposed bills are supposed to do.
Good. Because I just want people to think about this is why you're explaining this, because it paints this picture of what's really going on.
Yes, exactly. So, for instance, in Montgomery County, one of the judges who was appointed that I ran against, his law partner was on the governor's commission that recommended him. And so he whenever I pointed that out, it was like, talk about having an N, right? Whenever I pointed that out, he would say, well, my law partner did not sit in on the meetings. But your law partner is part of the commission. Everybody knows that. And we're those 12 people really expected to walk out there and say, well, something, we really didn't think your law partner
was good,
was up to standards. Did they really think that was going to happen? Well, it didn't. But see, that's what I mean. And I remember the last time I interviewed with the governor's commission, there was this woman on the commission who was particularly unhappy with me. I said to myself at the time, okay, I did not sleep with her husband. I did not kick her puppy. So why could she be so angry at me? Because, what did I do? She can't just be angry at me because I exist, can she?
Yes, she could.
And then a couple of months later, when the person was appointed for that position, she talked at his investiture, which is his swearing-in ceremony, and said, oh my gosh, I'm so glad so-and-so got appointed. He gave me my first job as a lawyer. He is the former law partner to my husband, and he and his wife and my husband and I, we hang out on a regular basis. We're really good friends. Oh my God, you'll make such a great judge. And I'm like, okay, let me get this right.
Yeah.
It's like, you have all these connections with him, and rather than you recusing yourself and saying that, I might be too close to this, let me not influence the process this way. Let me not use my position to influence the process. You instead got in there and made everybody, I shouldn't say everybody, you made people like me feel really, really bad and unqualified because you already had your choice from the very beginning. Yeah, so that's what I mean, and that's why I spend time talking about the governor's commission, because there are no rules in terms of who
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 who's
would
who?
sit for these interviews, and who they could recommend. Okay, so okay, I think I'm done with that part. Let's move on to the next part, which is, after the governor's commission has a short list, the short list goes up to the governor. The governor chooses somebody from that short list. If it is the district court, the person who gets appointed for 10 years, and almost certainly is going to be reappointed for another 10 years until that person reaches 60, mandatory age of retirement for 70, the way all the other judges in Maryland are. If it's the circuit court, they have to run in a possibly contested election, where other people who are qualified then go to the administrative office of the courts and get a letter of qualification and fill out a judicial financial disclosure form, give the information to the State Board of Elections, pay $50, and then the State Board of Elections then put them on the ballot. If they are appointed to the Court of Appeals or the Court of Special Appeals, then they run in a retainment race, which means that nobody could run against them. They could either, people could only vote yay or nay. And by historical measures, these people have won by at least 88% of the vote. So 88% of the people who vote yes, they should retain their positions, because basically the people voting usually don't know anything about.
They don't know.
One name, and you could vote for one person, so they're like, check and move on. Okay, now what these bills that are proposed are going to do is the one level of courts that people can actually vote for someone who was not appointed by, is under threat, in the sense that they're saying that we want to change that to make it more in line with the Court of Appeals and the Court of Special Appeals, where yes, the circuit court judges who get appointed have to run for election, but they run in an uncontested election. So we had yesterday a bill, Senate Bill 295,
that came up.
Yeah, that was proposed by Senator Ben Cramer from District 15, and he proposed it before, and other members of the state Senate and the House of Delegates have proposed it again. There was a hearing, and all these people testified saying, oh, it's such a great idea. We have such a great system. The Commission on Judicial Disability, we have such a great system. The Governor's Commission does such a great job. The Bar Association does such a great job. We have such great candidates who get appointed. We don't have to put them through an electoral process where they could actually be knocked out. And okay, so the Senate version of the bill was the hearing in the committee was yesterday, but on February 24th at 1:30 p.m. the House version of the bill is going to be heard, and that's House Bills 0035 and 0447. So if anybody wants to testify against, you want to testify against, contact us, and we will let you know how. You could contact me at Marylin for Maryland at gmail.com. So it's MARYLIN at gmail.com, or you could contact me through Facebook Messenger, or you could even call me or text me at 301-279-9020. The reason why it's so important that we are able to elect at least one level of our judges is because Maryland incarcerates a higher percentage of its young Black males than any other state in the country.
In the country.
That's according to the Justice Policy Institute. The ACLU has lots of reports that shows how Maryland's court system, over incarcerates and over sentences our young people. In terms of what's going on right now with the pandemic, there are a lot of issues having to do with debt relief and rent moratoriums and things of that sort. Those at certain points are going to be heard by the court system. I know that there are certain groups who have been concerned about the creditors' attorneys giving a lot of money to the judges to run their race. So all of these things play into who gets to hear the cases in the future. So to have a judge who just gets appointed through the process that I just discussed in terms of there's no recusal, so you could have all kinds of conflict with the people who come in front of you, and yet you still who interview with the governor's commission, and yet you still don't have to step aside, and you still could hear them and make a recommendation to the governor to have certain people appointed. It is extremely important. And you could tell that if there was no election process at the state level would look just like the federal level in terms of, not having the amount of people who are represented there who are actually representative of the people who appear in front of them. People who could understand. It's like, oh yeah, I've been there. I missed a few payments or two, as opposed to, hey, I'm entitled. I don't understand how people, can't pay their bills. There must be a moral flaw or something like that. So therefore, I'm going to rule accordingly. So those things are extremely important, and it's really, really important that we show our representatives that we're paying attention and we understand what's going on, and we are not in agreement with what they're trying.
Marylin, this is what's going to put people so much to sleep. They feel that they have to watch everything that their local, state, county, federal do, and they're like, it's too much for them to see. It's too much for them. So we thought we built a system that we had watch guard practices that checks and balances. So where was this built for a check? Was this ever built in a checks and balance where this was never going to happen, that is happening? Or was it built without a checks and balance?
Well, they say that if you hire people to watch out for you, then you need to watch the watchers.
Well, this is ridiculous. We can't do it all.
Well, you can't do it all, but there's certain things that you should be able to do. It's like when your representative comes and talks about what a great job they're doing, you should say, hey, prove it.
Yeah, prove it. Yeah.
Why should I just take your word for it that you're doing this, that, and the other? And I mean, the people who are proposing the bills, I really doubt that their constituents really want something like this. For instance, I ran for judge. I had less than $20,000. They had over $500,000. They got over 215,000 votes talking about the issues and why it is important to ordinary people to have somebody from the outside looking in and making sure that their best interest is being protected. And so you're right. Sometimes it is too much for the average person to pay attention to all of those things. But then if you elect people from the outside, people who are not getting money from creditors, attorneys, people who are not from the typical, hey, I know this is my law firm, and I know we golf with these people over here, and we're related by marriage to these people over here. Then you have these people who are there to protect your best interest. So sometimes you need to, look at the person who is running, who might not necessarily have the best and glitziest campaign, but who are really addressing the issues that you need addressed.
Let me add, and I was just thinking of this just now. Okay, so certain communities would like to have their own businesses, schools, and avenues of developing their commerce. Is there a way we can institute a system of your own courts and your own legal system? Basically, can blacks have their own courts, or people of color have their own courts and whites have their own? Is it? I know it's a fantasy. It's almost like Star Trek. But do you think is it possible, or is it the way it's, or is it just because it's in this country it's impossible to do?
Well, it depends, because if you have your own area, there are certain controls that you could have over your own area.
Okay.
I mean, think about the people who live in communes, for instance.
Correct.
When something happens, they handle it themselves, and I'm not making a comparison to communes, but think about the indigenous people and how they're considered
a separate nation.
A separate nation, so therefore they have a lot of separate things. So yes, that could be done. I'm really hoping that it will not come to that, though. I'm really hoping that what will happen is that we will have a system that's functioning based on the laws. There are lots of things about, oh, we need a law for this, we need a law for that, we need a law for this. I have actually thought that it's not the law that needs to be changed. It's actually using the law in a way that is helpful to the community. And that's what needs to be changed. Because what I see in many systems, it's a win or lose situation where, okay, you won, this person has lost. I was a facilitator with the Montgomery County District Court for almost 10 years. And as a facilitator, what I noticed was that you have a family come in who has not spoken to one another. So this person really wants this, and that's of utmost importance to them. And the other person might not necessarily want that, but they want something else that's of the utmost importance to them. So if you could get to the point where you give each person what is at the utmost importance to them, you'd be surprised at how happy they each are when they walk out of the room. And that's what restorative justice is about. And that's why I talk about restorative justice, because it doesn't necessarily have to be, one person win all and somebody else loses all situation. We might get to a situation where somebody was victimized, but what do they need? They need to have peace of mind. They need to have somebody, the person who victimized them, explain to them, why did you do this to me? Is there something particular about me, or was I just in the wrong place at the wrong time? And what can I do to, move forward from the trauma? As opposed to, okay, well, we're going to send this person away for however long, and the victim is still there with all the doubts and the trauma and haven't had a way to work through all of that. So I want to have a justice system where it's a win-win situation for everybody, no matter what color, creed, religion, gender, or gender identity.
That's idealistic. That is something that's kind of almost like food equality. We want food equality. We want home equality. We want job equality. We want these equality. Like, it's just these basic needs we want equal of, right? But in those basic needs, the gap is so tremendous. And just speaking in the legal issue, when you have 5% attorneys, black and brown, 2% women, black and brown, I don't see equality there.
Yeah, but I think it's one of those things that if we don't look towards that goal, we're never going to achieve it.
Correct.
If we say, you know what, this is so hard, we're never going to be able to get to the point where we want it. And it's not going to be perfect, but I do think it is worth walking in the direction of perfection rather than just standing and saying, well, and you know what they say about many hands make, light work.
Right.
So if we as a people decide that this is of utmost importance to us because we want to live in a just world where people who do things they're not supposed to are given the consequences for that, and people who are traumatized are given the help that they need. And and it's just not because this person is this color, this person is this religion. Then you know I think we could make it work. We have all the tools that we need. We just don't have the will as a system to make it work. And one
but
day we will wake up and say, you know what, it helps all of us.
I'm not even sure if we don't have the will. I believe we don't have the information.
I believe we don't have the will.
You really, because
Uh-huh.
I think tonight people heard something they have never known how it works ever. They've
Mhm.
never heard that before, and then if they heard it and they replay it, they're like, okay, well, when would I have heard this? Unless I have a person in my family, right?
Mhm.
They would have never heard this. You don't hear this at the factory plant unless something. I mean, you just don't hear this information, so you don't really understand what you're watching for. Because I don't, like you said, it's so not. It's not a publicized. It's public, meaning you can obviously go see, but it's not publicized.
Yes, that's true. That's true.
And
Which
that,
is why,
yeah.
which is why next week we are going to have a special guest, and she's going to continue discussing this bill and why it's so important. And I'm hoping everybody would tune in next week as well and get even more information about this, and why certain one of us who recognize the danger of going down that road, and why we're telling as many people as we can, you need to get involved. Your voice needs to be heard from this, because these are the consequences of, you remaining quiet.
And this is where we talk about civic engagement. This is still part of that civic engagement about getting that information, understanding, and then putting yourself into an action going, I either want to know more, or I heard enough and I don't like it, and I'm going to contact Marylin Pierre, or Marylin for Maryland at gmail.com and say, what do I need to do? Or I live in Vegas, I live in California, I live in wherever. How do I find out this information if it's happening here? And we can still help you with that. So that's good.
Yeah, because at this point, the court system is the system that we need to deal with. We are able to vote for the executive branch and the legislative branch, but it's the court system the judicial system that tells the legislative branch and the executive branch what they can do and what they cannot do. So it's really important to pay extra attention to these people.
When you do civic engagement like Marylin and I do, and people out there who are doing it, and for all kinds of different reasons, you see things come across your scope, and you kind of be like, wow, I've never seen that before, or that looks totally different. It's time for you to start engaging and pulling out those weeds, to figuring out what you can do to help along, or to stop before it gets too far.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, so, and some people say, why should I care what the judicial branch is doing? I'm not going to get a divorce. I'm not going to be involved in any criminal matters. I'm not going to sue anybody, and no one's going to sue me. And I say more power to you, because I could tell you as a lawyer, I cannot imagine being a party in any case that I would be happy with. I just can't, because when you're in court, it's because something did not go the way you thought it was going to go. And so because you don't know that, help the people who are now dealing with it, so that hopefully if it were your case next time, and I'm not saying it, I'm hoping that will happen, because like I said, I'm hoping that it won't. But if it does, then you have the best system to hear the case that you have. I think somebody once said that design a court system that you would like to have, no matter whether you are the plaintiff or the defendant, whether you're rich, you're poor, whatever you might be one day. If you're rich now, imagine yourself poor. If you're poor now, imagine yourself rich. If you're the plaintiff now, imagine yourself the defendant. If you're the defendant now, imagine yourself the plaintiff. No matter where you are in life, or no matter where you think you might be in life, design a judicial system for that. And we would have the best judicial system no matter who we are, as opposed to, I think it was Brian Stevenson from, oh gosh, the author of Just Mercy.
Brian Stevenson.
Yeah, who talked about how a rich, guilty person in the judicial system have a better chance than a poor, innocent person.
Yeah.
What sense does that make? How is that just?
How's that just? And how is it justice? It's not just.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So,
exactly.
Does tort reform cover this type of stuff? Or tort reform?
Yes.
Okay, that's
yes. Yeah, because if you have the lawyers who represent the insurance companies, helping the appointed judges get elected,
mm-hmm.
then
here you are.
And you cannot prove quid pro quo most of the times. I mean, sometimes it has been proven. That's why some judges are actually in jail for that. And I'm not saying that every judge does it, but sometimes we're human, and some things we do subconsciously.
And if a judge is in jail, I have mm-hmm. to tell you, I would like to see the jail they're in, because I am sure it is the country club of jails. If there is such a thing, and I don't whatever, I'm sure that is exactly where they're at.
Yeah, I've seen them on I guess some documentaries where they're tennis courts and things of that sort.
Yep, yeah. Saunas and pools and oh my goodness. So.
I, on the other hand, have been to the other types of jail where I've looked at my clients and saying, "Why are you wearing that, brown T-shirt?" And they're like, "Well, it's a white T-shirt. I just can't afford to, buy soap from the commissary to my T-shirt." It's yeah. So you're right. There's also two different types of, of jails.
Well, we can get into we'll get it another time, but we'll get into the prison system and how it's a business and not a reform. So that's a whole other issue in itself. I mean, when you turn something into a business, your business is to keep people in jail.
That's correct.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, I think they were talking about some places being $110 or more a night. When the beds are filled, and sometimes whether the beds are filled or not, there's a minimum that the local government pays to these facilities.
Thank you, Marylin.
But we cannot lose hope.
No, we're not losing hope. We're not losing hope. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for listening to You Be the Judge here on Bridges Live. I'm Dr. Paul, and that's Marylin Pierre, attorney at law. Please contact for Marylin for Maryland at gmail.com. If you have any questions, inbox us, send me something, and I'll get you right to the right person, get you right to Marylin, so you can ask those specific questions that would help you out. The problem we have is not having enough information about the legal system, and that's why we're doing the show You Be the Judge. It is to you to get the information so you can stay involved and not lose hope. But hope is not a practice. You have to be engaged. You have to learn how to do better by being informed like you are here, and so you can do more things later. So we're going to tackle this next week. Marylin, anything you want to tell us before we take off and see you next Wednesday?
Oh, I just love the painting behind you, and I wonder if you could tell people about that.
Well, the painting behind us is for our actually civic engagement group, 100 Black Men of Maryland, and it's a painting about what they see, they will be. So it's a young black boy looking at an adult black male who's distinguished, and he's saying, look what I can be when I grow up to be that. And that's the same thing what Kamala Harris did. That's the same thing what Obama did. That's the same thing Thurgood Marshall did for you. Look what I could be as I look up to see who I am. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And that's why we got to do more work, because someone's looking at you saying, I too can do.
That's true. And I'm hoping I set the best example that I can. And if someone is and they want to contact me, I'd be more than happy to do that. I love being a mentor. It's one of the best things that I do, I think.
And I before we were off air, before we come on, I do want to say this. All you civic groups, you fraternities, sororities, Cub Scouts, Tupperware parties, Anybody who thinks they get together and think they're making a difference in the community, I want you to contact me and say, I want to hear what you are doing to make a difference in our community, our country, and our global nation. Because we are, I know some of you are paying your dues. I know some of you get to wear your funny pins, wear those nice, gorgeous, funny hats. Trust me, I know them all. But are you working? Are you working for your community? And we need to be more vocal about what you're doing, because falling into the background or into the weeds or, into the wood paneling, that's the 70s thing, putting up that and disappearing into the wood paneling is not helping us move forward. We need you to be more vocal.
Yes.
Yep. Like my wife says, our children are watching. So,
yes.
and if they're watching, let them see us work.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, and everyone have a good night. And I wish you many blessings, and see you next week.
Thank you, Dr. Dyer. It's always a pleasure.
Mm-hmm.